This
Economic
conference
Development
will now
Advisory.
be recorded.
Today's March 9th, Economic Development Advisory Committee regular meeting. We have Norma Owen present, Robin Sumners, we have Elaine Hughes, and Brian Pennell committee members. And we were joined by staff member Eric Zeno and council liaison, Mr. David Williams, and staff member Meredith. I need the correct pronunciation.
Kunch.
Kunch.
Like, couldn't you remember her last name?
I couldn't imagine otherwise.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you very much. Starting the meeting, citizen comments. I don't see anybody from the public here. Is anybody aware of any citizens who intend to attend and wanted to speak in citizens comments, non-agenda? No, okay. Action items. Set meeting time and length for March 29 workshop. We discussed this at the last meeting, and we agreed that at this meeting, we would come up with our meeting time for March 29th. Or would anybody like to motion for a meeting time or have discussion?
I'll make a motion that we start like at 9 o'clock and at least go for 4 hours. How's that?
From speaking for myself, I would like to know if you'd be willing to amend that motion to start later in the day, just because I have a workload that I have to tend to, of say 4 o'clock, if that's possible.
I amend my motion to say we start at 4 o'clock. I'm easy.
So how many hours is that then that you're proposing?
She proposed in her motion, she proposed for 4 hours, to allocate up to 4 hours for the discussion.
Up to. Doesn't mean we have to, but up to.
So Paul, when you were thinking of it, how long were you thinking of it?
I'm expecting multiple meetings, quite frankly. That's my expectations. So limiting them to 4 hours, I think once you get beyond 4 hours, in my opinion, focus tends to get a little lost. You're starting at 4 p.m. By 8 p.m., people are getting hungry. They've been hungry. Kids need to be tended to. People want to get back to personal lives. Well, if nobody has any objections to Norma's motion, then can I have a second?
So you're saying 4 till 8?
Yes, ma'am. For March 29th.
Or less, depending on if our brain can be there. So in other words, no longer than that, up to. Yeah.
Is there, I don't know, is there an alternative time? That works better for people?
How many times is this going to meet?
We don't know yet. We are going to be working on, if you refer to the agenda packet, what we'll be doing is today we're going to be deciding which of the objectives from the economic development focus for year 21 and beyond we're going to be working on in that March 29 workshop.
Right.
And no one can necessarily ascribe a length of time that will take. So
gotcha.
Erring on the side of caution, it's safe to assume, in my opinion, that it'll take multiple meetings probably.
Because I would have actually seconded Norma's initial proposed time.
And what was that original time, Norma? 9 a.m.?
I was saying 9 a.m. Oh, okay, just for sake of parliamentary, what I would like to do is withdraw the motion and have a little bit of discussion, then we'll go back into it again.
Agreed.
So motion and then withdraw, hang on, and then I also got to make the notes so I can do my little. Okay, so part of my reason for saying earlier, I was just throwing something out, but when we're talking about putting together a work plan to aid Eric and our community, you know, on our economic development initiatives, that does take time because there's a little bit of a revisit in terms of what's currently happening and alignment, and then there's discussion about the objectives, which we'll do a little bit today. Anyway, in my opinion, it either will be a couple of meetings, but generally that's at least, if we had, when a community normally puts a work plan like this together, it's normally a 4 to 8 hour process, you know, when we're all together. So, but doing things virtually and around our work schedules and stuff like that, my mind was going to 4 to 8 hours allocated, however we do that. Further discussion is on the 29th. Brian, you were saying earlier was better. Is that what I got from you, the 9 a.m., or is there a couple of hours towards the latter part of the day?
For me personally, if we're still meeting remote, little kids running around the house and everything, it's easier for me to do it during, take a day off of work and do it during the daytime. So
Okay.
unless you want to see a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old running around the house, it's up to y'all.
That will keep our youth in perspective, Brian. That's what we're doing it for, our future there.
I'm certainly agreeable to it. It's not my first preference, but I'm happy to make it work for me.
Would maybe something like, so before 5, Brian? Is that okay? So if we were to look at something more like from 3 to 5, maybe? Yeah. Paul, would that be a little bit easier for you?
You know what? If I'm going to do it during the business day, Norma, I just assume get it over with and then just deal with it that way. It would be better for me. So a 9 to 1 is doable for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting a message from Gage Hunt saying he's having a technical issue. So if we could just pause for just a moment.
Okay.
Let me make sure he's looking at the right link. Hold on.
Or if we want to meet in person when the state is open, I'll take a chance to get out of the house when there's a 1-year-old and 3-year-old running around in the house. So either way.
Stand by. I'm just emailing Gage the link. Make sure he's got the right one. Y'all, please, by all means, if y'all have more discussion on that, please continue while I try to get Gage on into the meeting with us.
Eric, you're a big part of this. On the 29th, Monday morning, kicking things off. Is that going to work for you from 9 to 1? On the 29th of March?
Yeah, that's fine with me, Norma.
Okay.
I can do that too.
You can, okay. Elaine? Yeah, okay. Make sure we're not trumping on one of the chamber events.
Councilmember Williams, does that time frame work for you, sir? Great, okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
Hi, Gage.
Apologies, everyone.
Hi, Gage.
I think
We're glad you made it.
I clicked on last month's link.
Gage, we were just discussing the time frame and the start time and allotted time for discussion on March 29th for a workshop. And thus far, the consensus seems to be starting at 9 a.m. for approximately for a 4-hour duration on Monday, the 29th. Are you agreeable to that time frame?
Yeah, that should work great.
Okay.
So then I will reintroduce the motion that we have a workshop on Monday, the 29th, beginning at 9 and ending probably or at 1 p.m. or earlier on that day. Are there any seconds? Is
I will second that.
that Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The motion, everybody in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Unanimous, approved. 9 a.m., March 29th, up until 1 p.m.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Number two, action item number 2, approved minutes from the February 9 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes in your packet? Does anybody have any changes that they would like to see, any revisions to the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as they were presented.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Gage?
I think Gage got that second there, Norma. Is there any discussion? No? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion's approved unanimously. Great. Now we move on to discussion items. Develop the workshop agenda. At our last meeting, we all agreed that we would take a look at these items on the economic development focus for year 2021 and beyond. These items, which were included in your packets, and start deciding which ones we wanted to work on at this first workshop. With that being said, I'd like to open it up for discussion amongst the committee members.
If I can jump in and ask Eric a couple of questions in terms of, just basically what things are going on and highest impact activities and stuff from his point of view. Are there objectives here that, Eric, you think that we could aid you with that would have highest impact if we focused on a few of these? And which ones would they be?
Yeah, thank you, Norma. Either one, I think y'all had talked about in your Sunday meeting, the objectives 2.8 and 2.11, if I recall that right from speaking with the chairman. And that's fine with me. I mean, I still have my own objectives from the city itself, as from the city manager standpoint. This is more of the committee's initiative and focus as far as helping, you guys stepping in and helping in. So yeah, I'm fine with either one of them. We don't be able to cover all of them, I don't think, in one setting or one dialogue. So yeah, either one of them that you should choose will be fine with me.
Okay, 2.8.
That's the one I recall. And is that right, Mr. Chairman? Was it 2.8 and 2.11? That's what I was told.
Yes, let me allow me to thank you. Actually, you bringing that up reminds me, I wanted to share with the rest of the committee members. the Sunday after our last meeting, Norma, Gage, and myself, we met and started having a look at this list and putting our heads together to see what we felt were the areas where we could be the most impactful. And I appreciate Norma seeking out Eric's direct input as well. After the meeting, I just gave a brief synopsis to Mr. Zeno, and we talked a little bit about it. And the sentiments you heard just now echo what he conveyed to me, which is a deference to our whatever we come up with. With that, I would like to hand it back over. With that being said, Norma, if you'd like to continue, by all means.
Okay. You know, one of the things that I did do was a review of the comprehensive plan. And so there were two avenues, I thought, as we were, that I think an area of focus in terms of vision. I didn't really see vision in the 2030 plan, but there was information about where we're going and, you know, the things that we would like to see, et cetera. And that was kind of the overall vision. But I do think that there is what Paul and I would call a gateway approach. So in other words, if we're helping to bring more amenities to the local community members, right, and to attract additional people to live out in Lago. And then there's Eric, I think, is doing some, and Elaine are doing some really fabulous things in what we would call making Lago a destination, a place to visit, right, and spend dollars. And so in the destination category, I felt like there was, at least to me, feels like there's some pretty good focus and inertia, I guess. I'm not sure beyond bringing maybe some grants or something to help, you know, help with that there was a lot that we could do, but maybe in regard to the Gateway initiative, we could begin to kind of toy around with that. Does that make sense? In other words, what were some of the things that we were talking about, Paul, from a Gateway point of view?
So much of what we talked about by sheer coincidence was echoed. Several of those tenets were actually echoed in the article from the Wall Street Journal that I shared with everyone on March 6th. Did anybody not receive that article from March 6th at 11 a.m.? Anybody not receive it? Great, so everyone's received it. Has anybody not had a chance to read it? Even better. So you'll recall from that article, it spoke, again, by coincidence, coming on the heels of the conversations that Norma, Gage, and myself were having, is to her point about destination, amenities and attractions, in an era where we're now having remote work, you know, up to 50% of people's workforces working remotely and people moving. It creates a wonderful opportunity for exurbs like Lago Vista, who are not suburbs, they're exurbs. They're beyond the suburbs, they're further out. So there's cost of living that brings people here. But what that article, you'll recall, talked about is those suburbs from which people are moving. There's nothing to keep them there. They're static. There's nothing. They've got the grocery store, they've got a few convenience stores, but there's nothing else. So what we need, kind of along the lines of 2.8 and I think 2.11, are those things in our city which are going to keep people here who come to Lago Vista because they're now able to get out of New York or Chicago or San Francisco. Don't forget, we've got Oracle, we've got Charles Schwab, we've got Tesla, we've got a lot of great companies that are coming here to Lago Vista. And a lot of those people have income earners, they have highly educated workforce. those people are going to want nice homes. They're going to be looking for lake. They want to get views. And the only value in Travis County, the most affordable of that type of housing in Travis County is Lago Vista. So what I think should be looking at, consistent with 2.8 and 2.11, is what are the things we can recommend as a committee to advise the council, to Eric, that we can do that can keep those people here and grow the economy, but most importantly, bringing in outside dollars and not just recirculating dollars inside of our economy at the local restaurant or the gas station and stuff. We need those highly skilled people to work here and bring outside dollars into our economy. That's what's going to grow it, not recirculating money coming into the food trailer amongst other Lago Vistans. You've got to bring in more money from outside. So I would advocate for a focus, at least in this first workshop, of putting our attention into 2.8 and 2.11. There are 2.9 seems to be somewhat subject to 2.8. When you look at 2.2, some might argue that that's somewhat in the envelope of retail strategies, who the city's talking to. 2.1, how much of that is CapCog? Those are future conversations that we can have, but that's my short answer to Norma's question on some of the things we spoke about.
Can I ask a question for clarification on 211?
Certainly.
That specifically says encourage business park development, not encourage business development. So it's talking about actually creating some type of commercial park creation. Is that right? Because if it does, that's a huge, would involve a huge initiative.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? It's not just talking about bringing technology companies into Lago. It's talking about creating the central location for those businesses to go into, which is really an enormous project if that's what it's talking about.
I agree with you, Gage, and I think that that's one of the reasons. You'll recall at our last meeting, we discussed the need to have our development services director participate in this conversation. And I've actually sent him an email asking if it will be available for our March 29 work session. And I told him that I would follow up after today. He might have some input on that, for example, because of the zoning nature of it. If we're going to be making recommendations, that's got to at some point, I think, flow through Roy, and let's get his feedback on it. I recall reading in the Hill Country News about a month ago that Leander was revisiting its comprehensive master plan. And one of the things they were doing is rezoning to heavy industrial on areas along 1431. I don't recall the specific classification, but the relevance of that is that these tech companies, many of whom just I deal with because of the nature of my business, they have SMT lines where they have their circuit boards and they run everything through. Those types of industrial classifications are germane to producing a widget inside of an HVAC controlled environment. And is that to your point, is that something that we need to be looking at 2.11? How big of an endeavor is this? I don't know, Gage.
Yeah, it's if we were talking about an initiative that was going after the types of businesses that are mentioned in 211, I absolutely am 100% on board with that. But when you throw the word park in there, it says now we're looking for a single place that we can put all of these businesses together, and that adds a lot of scope to that particular objective.
Agreed. And I think it's important for all of us to remember that these objectives, which can use a lot of improvement, these were written, as I understand it, before EDAC was even created. So this isn't these aren't our instructions that we have to follow and, okay, we have to check that, we have to do this, we have to do this. But this is more or less a starting point. Remember, everyone, we didn't come into this, there was no annual work plan already in place when we tasked ourselves with this as a committee. So we're starting from scratch. We can't go back and amend or revise an existing work product. So at our workshop, we can work through these objectives and figure out where we want to go and start with the ones that we deem today to be most appropriate for that workshop. Mr. Williams.
You all can amend any one of those objectives to meet the objective that you want to go after. You don't have to take it literally as it's written. I mean, in us looking at updating the comprehensive master plan, there is wording in that master plan that no longer apply to what's going on in our community. So we're trying to adjust it to fit what's happening in the community now. So if you see if it needs to be amended to fit your goal, you can amend that. If you need to take out the word park to just have it focus on business opportunities, or however you want to word it, you can word it to fit your objective. Just, that helps.
I think that makes a big difference, Dave, in what the objective says we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Again, remember this was done back in 2006 or 2005, way before we ever started this. So it can be changed to fit what you're trying to do. Okay. Don't get hung up on the words so much, as far as figure out what your objective is that you all want to do and go from there.
Great.
If I can, I do, Robin, well, you've been wonderfully involved in a lot of what's going on here in the community. Did you have any thoughts in regard to what you feel like the Economic Development Committee can do this year in terms of discussions and agenda items?
The things that I have noticed most is the number of people moving in to Lago Vista to live here. And I don't know how much this piece of paper impacts the people who choose to come and buy a house. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's just very interesting that people are coming. I think we live on Bunyan Circle. There's not very many houses. Anything there is new is being built, and it's sold for everything that's built goes up in value. But the people have come from other places. From I think the people next door to us bought this very lovely home, and they had come from Georgia, but they are Texans who had wanted to come back and live near the lake. So one of the questions to me is, why do people come here? Since we moved here at the beginning of 2018, so now we're at 2021, and I understand that there's close to 1,800 people have come in that period of time. Mm-hmm. So people are moving here. Why? Why are they moving here? That's one of the, it's a beautiful place to live. There's no question. But so it seems to me that why people are moving here is something to keep in mind when we're looking at what kind of development we want to create. Because it's very, to me, Lago Vista is a very beautiful community. Where it's looking pretty ragged at the moment, but generally it's really lovely. So I think it's one of the questions is, when people find their way, you don't drive down a street in Austin and say, oh, this is a nice block, let's live here. People have to come here and find it for some reason. So what's the pull? What is the reason that people are coming here? And what kind of development should we be creating for the kind of people who are moving? And it's not a economic thing for that decision. I don't think it's people. There are many different kinds of homes here that people can buy, but they are. So, I would say, yeah, we would really like to have some other restaurants, there, but what is the real development for this community so that people enjoy living here and have made a decision to live here because there are economic reasons as well? I don't know the answers to those, but I think we should be looking at that.
Well, I'm wondering, Eric, do we have some data that speaks to some current data, or no? I see Elaine's head shaking no.
I'm waiting for Eric to tell us, why are people moving here? Because every story I hear is different.
The story is different. I don't want to concentrate so much on residential from an economic development standpoint. I mean, retailing and stuff like that follow rooftops, but these initiatives that we are talking about, and I'm glad Council Williams is on here, we don't have to even, you can change all of this. This can be a minute. You don't have to stick to this piece of paper here and say, this is what we need to do. And like you stated, the business park, as Elaine know, we have very limited commercial spots now. So, I mean, how are you going to build a commercial business park when you're limited on commercial lots now? So I would not get so dug in and stuck on the wording of this actual document, as Council Williams said, because this can be changed. We might want to go a totally different direction. So it's a great starting point, but I wouldn't get locked in on this document per se. If I'm looking at the comp plan, the only person that was on the council at that point in time was Mayor Tidwell, and none of the comp plan advisory committee is that much still involved with the city at this point in time. Only a few, as I look at those names right now. So the only council member that was on at that time is the mayor.
So I would submit to everybody on committee, let's focus on, how would you guys right now like to decide which of these, let's pick two, or let's do this. How do you guys think we should do 2, 1, 2, or 3 of these or more in the workshop? Let's come up with a number, and then of those, if we want 2, which 2 of these do we want to focus on in the workshop? Because the reason that's important, remember, we have to publish the agenda, and we need to be able to talk about those agenda items only. We can't stray to, if we pick 2.8 and whatever, we need to be talking about just those items.
Well,
I would suggest 2.8 through 2.11. I mean, those all are the ones you just talked about, 2.8 through 2.11.
And then potentially add additional, maybe add a thing for additional objectives developed out of conversation, maybe something like that, which would allow us to go outside of, I think, Paul, the 8 to 11. And before we go too far, Brian, you're quiet, but I have a feeling you have a lot. Have you had a chance to discuss? I would love to hear from you, any of your thoughts.
Well, I agree with Paul. The way to create wealth within a community is either you have to manufacture it or do through business, right? Service oriented and retail oriented businesses normally don't create wealth; they just shift it. You either have to build it, educate it, or govern it, right? So those are the 3 ways that you create economic development in a community. So you know, I think looking at 2.8 through 2.11 is good, and they'll eventually lead to kind of lowering of tax rates and economic incentives and things like that.
So does anybody else have a preference for any? Brian, would you mind just clarifying? Did you say 2.8 through 2.11? You did?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
just to keep it broad, just that way.
Okay.
That way we have
Right.
we're not limited to what we can talk about. So I mean, if we start talking about, you know, economic initiatives and incentives, you know, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. So
Okay. Does anybody else have an alternate suggestion? Well, if there is no more discussion, then I'd like to ask for a motion to that effect. Perhaps, Brian?
The only thing I would say
Yes.
is looking at this, maybe 2.7 matters in this as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So just keep that in the conversation, I guess is all I'm saying.
So what we need right now, I think, is somebody to make a motion for what they would like to see us focus on in the workshop on March 29th.
So what are we saying? A motion in which we will look at objective 2.11, 2.8, and 2.7. I'll go backwards. In this discussion that we're going to have on the 29th of March.
So if you would like to make a motion, we can
Can I
have
call that a
discussion
motion?
on
How do I say that? I would make a motion for those three items. Can you say it again?
Say them again so we're all clear. And then and let me just interject real quick. Remember, and if you guys would like to propose an alternative motion, you can ask her to amend her motion. You can always vote no and then propose a new, and if it fails, propose a new motion. And this way we can arrive at consensus on what everybody wants to do.
yeah, Robin, maybe we just you know, edit that to be to consider 2.7 through 2.11. I would assume that we don't have to talk, you know, solve all of them. We can just consider them.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. So Robin, would you care to amend your motion?
Okay, I move that we have the objectives 2.7 through 2.11 in our discussion in the meeting that we're going to have on the 29th of March. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good. Is there a second?
I'll second Robin's motion.
Okay, we have a second from Elaine. Any further discussion? Okay. Then we'll close the discussion and let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes, and we will discuss objectives 2.7 through 2.11 at the March 29 meeting to be held at 9 a.m. up until 1 p.m. on March 29, Monday. Discussion item number, item number 4 on the agenda, discussion item broadband internet service update.
So, Mr. Chairman, before you proceed, are you asking the Development Service Director to be in on that agenda for the workshop?
I intend to, yes, Mr. Zeno, I intend to email him after the meeting today or tomorrow and invite him to the meeting and put in front of him these items. These are the items we're going to be discussing, and invite him to participate if you'd like.
Okay, because we need to have that agenda to Sandra with him on that agenda if you're going to ask him to be a part of that. And I'm sure Sandra's, I think she's out. I have to go back. She's going on vacation a few days, but she will have to have that posted. I think it's 6, 7, 8 days before the actual agenda meeting. And a lot
If
of these
he's
initiatives, I
actually,
just want to touch back
that's
on that. Again, this is before you had the Economic Development Department. This is also before you had a Parks and Rec Director. So to answer Robin's question, to pursue opportunities for recreation and tour, we have a Park and Rec Director on board too that encompasses something. We have Sunset Park, we have a couple of parks, we have the baseball field. So again, when we dive into this, like Brian, I kind of touched on, keep in mind, this was written before a lot of departments were even here. It's a lot of other things. And back at Lane, probably membership was lower. Now she has made more members. So there's a lot of moving parts in this
so
thing, that is going on.
right. I agree. I'm trying to remember all the proper rules and procedures as we talk about this. I don't think it's necessary. The motion, they're joining us has no bearing on the motion itself. That's more or less a conversation to have after the meeting, correct?
Who joined us? You talking to me?
Yes, regarding Roy joining us.
Yeah, we need to give him Roy as soon as Roy is a busy man. So if he's going to be, he needs to be contacted immediately to see if he's going to be able to join us. Correct. That's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to number 4, broadband internet service update. Mr. Hunt, you're up.
Yeah, I have gotten some information, and let me ask, I've done this on Zoom. I have not done it on GoToMeeting. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
It is. We would need Mr. Street, I believe, to make that possible, unless I don't
Dave,
see
can
an
you
option
make
on my screen.
Dave? Can you make Gage a presenter?
I'm sorry, Mr. Zeno, what was that?
I'm talking to Dave. Actually, to make Gage a presenter. I'm at it.
You see there?
That's what I'm waiting to see if he responds. Eric, are you at are you officing with him right now? Are you in the building with him right now?
No, he's over at the police station. He's not in our buildings, but I am in the city hall, correct? But he's not in city hall.
Okay, so he's not responding to us, Gage. I don't have a
Okay.
number for him. Do you want? Would you like Mr. Williams or Mr. Zeno to reach out to him?
No,
Call him?
that's okay. I will do this verbally. Let me just adjust my screens so I can see everything.
Let me see.
Because I have talked to both the Spectrum people and the AT&T folks to get an update on where they are on broadband availability in Lago Vista. So, okay, let me start. See if that works. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay. Here's what I know from AT&T, and this is straight from a communication I received from their engineering department. They say they do offer fiber-based services in Lago, that there are legacy services, and I asked for clarification of what legacy services were and did not receive it. I am assuming they mean DSL, which is phone wire communicated. There are legacy services available that predate fiber that were only made available in the last 15 years. Most of those existing areas that still have legacy will remain that way. So there is no plan on AT&T's front to improve the speed of internet access in those areas that have DSL right now. Yeah, was that a question?
No, I was coughing.
Okay. It says nearly all of the fiber-based services in Lago were and continue to be driven by growth. And he mentions Tessera specifically. Oh, okay. Let's see if this works.
Dave, you should be a presenter now. Just talk to Dave.
Okay. Did it come up?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you can see the PowerPoint now.
Yeah.
And then and this is straight from an email communication I got from them. On occasion, AT&T will have initiatives driven by upper management to expand fiber into areas where there are legacy services. But he says that his engineering group has no way of knowing what that's going to be until they get the word. So no idea of when or where that might be coming. Now, things were a little better on the Spectrum side. The Spectrum folks mentioned that they have construction going on, and this was about 3 weeks ago I got this information, on Omaha Drive and American Drive, and that once that's finished, they estimate that they'll have about 90% of the city covered. Now, Spectrum's speeds, as I understand it, are a minimum 200 megabits per second and go all the way up to a gigabit. So significantly higher than what AT&T offers in what they call their legacy areas. And they did mention that they have one specific area in town, Draper's Cove, Draper Mountain Trail, Treat Trail, where they have an issue expanding their service there because they need a tie-in to Pedernales network, and they're trying to get that arrangement set up right now. So, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I may ask a question, Gage.
Sure.
The Drapers, those 2 or 3 names that begin with Draper, are those are those within the new Firefly development?
Yes.
Elaine's saying yes. I wasn't sure.
So that makes sense. For those of you who don't know, the high school has fiber optic internet from AT&T Uverse, and they do have their lines going all the way down Lowman, and then it splits left going down Shoreline Ranch into the area where I'm at. All of that area, Marshall's Harbor, Shoreline Ranch, Marshall's Point, there is fiber that goes all the way back in there. And apparently I'm learning today, as are perhaps many of other committee members, that it's going now down Boggy. And boy, if they can just keep going down Boggy beyond Firefly, that'll be a wonderful thing.
I would like to say, they don't really tie into the PEC network. What they're probably working out is what's called pole attachments, because PEC is electrical, but they have the poles. And so now they're going to want to attach to the poles. But that's a standard agreement, so hopefully that won't take long. I would suspect that the parent company for Firefly Cove must be working this at a higher level, because they'll need that service for those nice homes to facilitate both internet and work from home options.
Yeah, now again, that was the Spectrum feedback. That wasn't from AT&T.
And that's who I'd expect to be working with Firefly Cove and wanting to attach to existing poles versus putting all new, telephone poles that cost too much. And that's really a good sign. And I would say that that's probably happening at a high level, and that will help that development sell. They need it. It's essential.
Yeah, the part of what I walked away from in all this and talking to these 2 different groups was Eric basically, and Elaine and Robin, y'all were involved in this too. We saw a lot more willingness to partner on the part of Spectrum than we did with AT&T. I just got no encouragement from AT&T at all. So, Eric and Dave, one of the big gains that we made, I guess it was year before last with Spectrum, was when they tied in with some of the water work that we were doing.
Yeah, correct.
To run those underground lines. We just need to keep our dialogue open. So if any opportunities like that come up in the future, we can take advantage of it. But the good news on that side is they say they're going to have 90% of the city covered.
That is good.
That's wonderful. The just broadband today is, it's as important as roads, in my opinion, especially for so many of us who work from home. I'm on my other computer monitor. I'm looking at that article I shared with everybody, and I just did a keyword search on broadband, and just the sentence is so important. To lure and support the growing ranks of remote workers, communities will need to build out more complete ecosystems for them to live, work, and gather. First and foremost, that means ensuring adequate broadband connectivity.
People who move here and spend $400,000 for a house and find out they can't get internet are very angry when they come to the chamber office.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want those CEOs from Oracle and Apple and all those upper level executives come out here and do their multi-million-dollar homes, they're going to want broadband internet. People who are starting up their own businesses, broadband internet. You're running your business online. So important.
One of the things we need to be clear on is just what we mean by broadband. What are our expectations of what broadband means? I know that the Texas Commission on broadband to rural areas, Eric, that you let us join in on their conference once. They define it as 25 megabits per second download and 5 megabits upload. When I've talked to the AT&T folks, they've tried to tell me DSL is broadband. So we.
I was
Is that
on
a comment?
And with that low standard, they still said in Texas, 1 million people can't even get that low of a standard.
Yeah.
And where are those people going to be in the school at home, work at home environment? It's just nothing is there. So we have to use the 200 megabits per second as our standard. People who are moving here expect that much.
I would agree with that. How does the rest of the committee feel?
The goal is 1 gig. I'm going to tell you for what future is. It really is at least as an offering. That's the goal. Minimum 200, 250. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You've got to have that bandwidth. For what it's worth, right now, I just pulled up my task manager here in Windows, and this meeting facilitated on our computers right now. I'm receiving 900 megabits per second, and I'm sending 12. So you've got to have that bandwidth. It's now fiber optic in general, like the AT&T Uverse fiber optic I've got right now. I'm running a speed test with Okla right now, and I've got on the fiber, I've got a download speed of 861 megabits per second, upload of 907. And that, the only way you're going to get that is with fiber. Now, something to think about is, there is 5G, and Elon Musk is working on a new workaround. I don't have the article in front of me. I shared it. Mr. Williams, you might remember that maybe 6 months ago, 4 months ago. The name of it escapes me, but he's in the process right now. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a satellite, no more dish TV, but Elon Musk SpaceX TV, and it's high bandwidth, it's broadband via satellite, and it's a simple setup. it's 30 pounds of equipment. And the subscription rates, I think they were targeting were around $120 a month. So that's in line with, for example, what I'm paying right now for my AT&T Uverse. That's actually less. So the 5G, just I feel it appropriate just to kind of, I spoke with the AT&T Uverse technician about 8 months ago, and I asked him, I said, do you see 5G replacing broadband, specifically out here in Lago Vista? And he said, off the record, now it's on the record, but off the record, having worked there as a technician for 20 years, he was one of the last employees who still gets full benefits in retirement, and went on to say that there's no way we should expect to see 5G. He said, remember that 5G, all of our routers that we have right now, they're all 2.5 or 5G. 2.5G, your signal is more narrow, so it goes farther. 5G means it's wider, which is why it can handle more bandwidth. But the problem is with that wider bandwidth is it doesn't go as far. So about every 300 feet, you've got to have a repeater.
That's right. Correct.
You're not going to put that on top of chimneys or poles.
And
And
we'll put it on the back of cable repeaters, by the way, though.
do they? I asked him, I said, what about the
5G's coming.
rumor,
A little more time.
what about the rumors of health concerns? I said, is there any truth to that? And he said, would you put your face up and your nose up to the microwave when you're running it? And I said, nope. And he said, well, I wouldn't want to live underneath the 5G tower. And he said, it's radiation. And anyway, so 5G, I don't know. It might be transient, like beta versus VHS, who knows? But that's my input on what I'm hearing out there. Gage, great job on, did I understand it was you and Elaine who participated in this call?
Yeah, it was really a listen in, and it was a Texas-wide call. And I, like Gage, was just hung up on how rural areas are so far behind that they even compared it to bringing electricity to rural areas in the 1900s.
Wow.
But Paul, you're dead on when you say that broadband is essential to our economic development. It's a critical piece of infrastructure that if we don't ensure that we've got it available across our whole community, it's going to be tough to expand like we want to.
Agreed.
You've been saying that for a long time.
Eric, David, somebody, Elaine, do we have anyone that is a point person that is currently advocating with the companies in regards to?
It's Gage. It's Gage. We had a meeting. I don't know when, with both a public. I don't know. I might be able to dig out the two cards, but we had an engineer and a public interface for Spectrum. And I felt we made big progress. We did, because there were lots of places that didn't have it, just by bringing focus to Lago Vista. Now, I know they're putting a lot of dollars in the Manor area because that's where they're building the big factory. And there's so many houses being built there that, he admitted it's a limited budget. We can only go so many places. And he spent some here, but he's spending a lot on the south side or east side of Austin also. But we just have to do what Gage did, keep calling and calling, and don't forget about us. We know you have limited dollars, but we're here too.
Right.
Very encouraging to see that someone at Firefly is somehow pulling that too. More squeaky wheels, and then hopefully Lakeside to Sarah, they got to deliver to their homes. Yeah. And they're putting in a new builder with Toll Brothers. So, but they can't pass by old Lago or classic Lago, as I like to call it. I mean, we can't just have the planned communities have it and the other people not. That won't work.
One of the things we also might want to figure out how we can encourage is for our individual citizens to be calling in and making requests for broadband installation, because that resonates with the suppliers as well. So, you know, that
they're calling and they're paying big bucks for installation. You know, the general feeling from realtors is, oh, if your neighbor has it, you have it. And so someone walked down the street, oh, you have it? Well,
right.
they're 4 lots up and it's not there. And they are furious. And the realtors don't mean to mislead, but nobody checks or calls. And then the burden is on you, buyer beware, you should have called. But that is not a very deliver when they're mad in the lobby. So,
Elaine, do you know what that fee is for that exorbitant installation fee is that you referenced?
I heard a man paid $300,000 for his house and he paid $3,000 for the internet hookup. So
it depends on how far they gotta go from where they tap in. Oh, it's in the cable industry, they call it the last mile. And so depending on, I mean, I know thanks to one of my neighbors paying $500, we were able to make sure that we had it. But I did ask before we inked the deal, right, on living out here. And because
you've really got to call. Yeah, you've got to call. And there are, 4 lots over. And then, it's the same with water here. You think your neighbor has water and you're going 2 houses down, it'll be okay. But there's a case in Hayes Cove where some people at the top of the hill have water, and yet it's going to be $300,000 for the next lot to get it, by the way it was run. So there's so many exceptions. And I don't want to be negative, Nellie here. It's just, it was not built out. Our town was not built out in a normal phase approach. Right. And so there are anomalies here that people are not used to finding.
I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know that at St. Peter's, we had the Spectrum come, and they're really responsive. If something comes up, they are there instantly. It's amazing. But we do streaming every Sunday, so lots of people get it.
Gage brought up a point a moment ago. It's one thing to be, for a new or prospective homeowner under contract, to call Spectrum or AT&T and really insist and push them for the broadband service. But squeaky wheels get the grease, and 10 people who speak up make more noise than 10,000 who are silent. I wonder if there's a way that we as a committee can make a recommendation. I don't know who. Does anybody have any ideas on how we can get a public awareness campaign out there to where, we're just explaining the benefit, the features, advantages, and benefits of how important it is that just everybody in Lago Vista is calling these guys? We need a phone number. Keep it simple, stupid. Come up with a contact name, a phone number, even if it's a general phone number. It's kind of like calling up your congressman to affect the outcome of a piece of legislation. If you've got 3,000 people, or they're fielding 100 phone calls a day from Lago Vista saying, I will buy your service if you'll just bring it, that gets attention, surely, instead of just every once in a while it comes to their desk.
That made a difference in our area off of Boone. Right. When all of the residents in this area almost simultaneously started sending in a request, in this case it was Spectrum, for broadband, all of a sudden it got incorporated into the construction project they had planned for the area.
Right.
That plus the visit with the city manager. I think we pressured them both. And Boone was another unique situation. They were coming from this side, they were coming from this side, and all the people in the middle couldn't get it.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. That was exactly. Is that fixed now?
It is fixed now, and they've done the construction, but you just don't know how many other streets that are like that. And they wouldn't share the map. It was kind of they couldn't share the map with us, find out what streets have it and what streets didn't. I thought it was both what gauged with the government and the callers. Out of flooding their call center, like a congressman is a little different, and that, their call centers people are working from home, their call centers in Rochester, Minnesota, you know, I don't know what you'd make an impact. I think the government calling them into the city or saying we're in economic development, we need it, has a bigger hammer than a lot of little hammers.
Right.
Agreed.
So I feel like is chairman, I'm supposed to, one of my jobs is to guide discussion and kind of move the meeting along. Would anybody care to have more discussion on broadband? If not, I'm ready to close this item out and move on.
The only thing I would suggest is that potentially we add to our the 29th a discussion as to
Broadband.
how we can facilitate broadband. Like an idea would be maybe amongst the committee, a couple of people that said, yeah, we'll be the stage that Elaine has been doing, you know.
Hold that thought for just a second, because that is absolutely germane to the future agenda items topic, which is next. Yes, Councilman Williams.
Are you getting ready to get into future agenda items? Is that what
Yes,
you're getting? Before you do that, are you going to mention about Clive?
Yes, thank you so much for reminding me. Folks, Clive Rutherford, he has resigned his membership to the committee. He is pursuing other interests, and David and I sent him a very nice, his letter. We've all heard him speak so eloquently, and his letter was equally eloquent and gracious. And David and I responded in kind to his letter. Councilman Williams is going to be, is that something I should bring up, who you're going to be? Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Williams?
Yes, in order for me to fill Clive's position, I had to get it on the next council meeting, which will be on next Thursday. So I will be nominating Russell Murphy to come back onto the Economic Development Committee at that time to the council.
Thank you. Norma and Brian, if you don't know him, he was previously, up until recently, he was on this committee recently, so he's coming back to it, and I think that'll be a nice addition, subject to approval from council, which I'm sure will happen. And there we go. So moving on, so that wraps up discussion items. Future meetings, I've got, for the future meetings so far, we have discussion on 2.7 through 2.11 at the appointed time. And then Norma, you were saying on broadband.
What I was suggesting is that we add a discussion about, how would I say that? Seeking a couple of people on our committee as broadband cheerleaders.
broadband outreach, promotional.
Broadband outreach, yes. I'm going.
And I would actually submit.
By de facto, we've had Elaine engaged doing that, and but I don't want to assume that we're always gonna, you know, be putting that on Elaine engaged. I think it needs to be a little more, you know, yes, this is front and center. We have a person or people. So
I agree. I actually think
about that.
I feel like we should just, this is such an important thing for Lago Vista that I frankly think keeping it on the agenda, on every single agenda, is important. And because that keeps the conversation going and keeps ideas flowing. And that's what we need to do. Priority number one, and really. So discussion on broadband outreach, and then if we wanted to, this is a question for Mr. Williams, I'm not sure due to my lack of proficiency in procedures. If we wanted to, at the next meeting, have a discussion about appointing a couple people from our committee to promote and publicize the need for broadband, and, for example, ask and petition the citizenry to call them. Here's a couple contacts, reach out to them. Just sometimes, if it goes in that direction, is that a discussion item or was that an action item on the agenda? How is that actually listed?
I would list it as a discussion item plus possible action item, in case you can make a decision. And I'll have, Eric, do you see any reason why they couldn't do this?
No, I don't. I would ask them to, as from a staff perspective, of course I'm involved, but please include our communication and marketing person, PIO Mark Meredith would be great for that, as well as a liaison on that committee. And I know I'm putting Meredith on the spot. That's if she agrees, but I'm putting her on the spot.
So we're talking about creating just a standing subcommittee on broadband, right? Okay.
Yes.
We still have our spectrum contact, Gage. I think you do, and myself and Josh was talking to him. He did move to a different department, and I think on the engineering side of the spectrum now.
He did.
Yes, and so, they can definitely, for the chairman to come out, he was very receptive to come out and speaking to us last time when I had him come out, if that's something that you guys want to do in the future.
That's something we can certainly talk about at the next meeting. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to see on the future agenda? Actually, just to clarify one thing, this agenda, actually I'm just thinking aloud, this agenda would be definitely separate from the workshop agenda. Is there anything that anybody needs to see on either the workshop agenda or the next regularly scheduled meeting? Nothing. No.
Chairman, we had talked about you getting an update from retail strategies. I don't know if you want that on the next agenda or the next one. We had talked about that. So
thanks for the reminder. We could have an offline discussion on that about whether or not to bring them in. Okay. Well, if that,
I actually think they might be good to come in on the workshop at the beginning. They only take about 20 or 30 minutes, and that way you could have that kind of talking about, again, the initiatives, if they're going to be on the retail sector of it,
Now, one of the things that, to Eric's point, one of the things that retail strategy has done a good job of is saying these, as a general rule, here's the profile of the people that are, Robin said, who's moving out here? They know that. So that might be a good thing to do.
does everybody agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll get them on the workshop then. Okay, and then Eric, when will Sandra need this agenda? When will she need to be in receipt of this agenda by in order to properly notice it for the 29th? You mentioned earlier
Sandra needs it probably she'd like to have I would say about the 23rd or 24th, that Tuesday or that week prior.
Well, you and I can circle back and we'll get this wrapped up by the end of this week and ensure she has it by the 15th.
And I think I'm not sure, but spring break is next week. I'm not sure she was out then, but she told me she was out a couple of days. So we're gonna make sure she comes in and does, but I don't want to bombard her with it coming in on her off date. She does do that, but okay. I don't know if she's not. I'm actually, for spring break next week. It might be, I'm confused on what day it was though, when she was out.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any other future agenda items? Well, with that, I think that concludes our meeting. We need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Sure.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.